Hi, it's Pastor Tony again, and we're continuing our last session, our last videotaped session anyway, on what is marriage. And this is part two of that question: what is marriage? So I want to talk to you today a little bit more about that. We're going to walk through some ideas of what marriage is, and allow you guys, of course, to discuss that and what this means to you. And I want to also mention, if you have any questions about this, we can gladly talk about that. You can message me and I would be glad to respond to you on that. So first of all, we've talked about marriage as a covenant. It's a sacred bond between a man and a woman, instituted by and publicly entered into before God, and it's normally consummated by sexual intercourse. And that's what God's plan for the marriage involves, that. And it's a covenant that involves at least the following five vital principles. And we're going to talk about that today, okay? And the first principle is this, is the permanence of marriage, the permanence of marriage. Marriage is intended to be permanent. Now, I know in our culture today, a lot of people talk about, that it doesn't have to be permanent. Well, you know what? It needs to be permanent in your minds. As you're starting this out, no one gets married with the intention, hey, you know what, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be gone and I'll go find somebody else. Things happen. If you go into marriage with divorce in the back of your head, it's going to go that way. That's just the way that it works. You need to go into marriage with this understanding that marriage is permanent. The Bible teaches us that what God has brought together, let no person break apart. In fact, that's one thing that is said during the wedding ceremony. What God has brought together, let no one break apart. Marriage represents a serious commitment that should not be entered into lightly or unadvisedly. If you're having doubts about marriage, don't get married, man. You need to wait until you're sure this person is somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with. It involves a solemn promise or a pledge, not merely to one's marriage partner, but before God. And so the Bible teaches that divorce is not permitted except in a very limited number of biblically prescribed circumstances. In other words, of course there's a way out if things go horribly wrong and if this person is abusive and all that kind of thing. But I'm talking about divorce the way that our culture talks about divorce. In fact, the whole idea of no fault divorce, all that really means is we didn't care enough to work things out. Okay? So I would encourage you, don't go into marriage thinking that way. Go into marriage thinking that this is permanent. I'm committing to you for the rest of my life. That's how we should look at marriage. The second thing is the sacredness of marriage. See, marriage is not merely a human agreement between two consenting individuals, or it's a civil union, in other words. It is a relationship before and under God, that God has brought us together. And so we can talk about all the different kinds of marriage that our culture talks about, but it's a contradiction in terms, really, because marriage, as defined by God, is one man and one woman for one lifetime. That's what he talks about. Since Scripture universally talks about that and gives that prescription on what marriage is, and God is the one who ordained marriage and established marriage, he can define it. So it is sacred. It's holy. And what that means is it's set apart. You are now set apart with that other person. They are now yours. You are now theirs. And that's a sacred bond. Don't let anyone come between that bond, not your parents, not your children. And I will say this, for some couples, when things aren't going right in the relationship, a lot of times a parent can bond with a child and can allow that child to come between their relationship with their spouse. Now, that's not a healthy way to be. And the reason for that is one day that spouse is going to leave home. Believe it or not, it will happen. That spouse is going to turn 18, 19, 20, or 25, and they're not going to be home any longer. And you're going to look over the table, and there's going to be your spouse. If you've allowed that child to come between you, it's going to make a major issue. And you may be looking across the table going, I don't even know who you are anymore. So I would encourage you, make sure that you hold on to that sacredness. Then there's the intimacy of marriage. Marriage is the most intimate of all human relationships. And this is why I believe, I'm firmly of the opinion that I believe sex should be held for marriage. And the reason is, we leave a piece of ourselves with every person that we have sex with. And I know that people go, oh, you need to make sure that you're sexually compatible and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a bunch of hogwash, to be honest with you. The most sexually happy people in the world, according to every survey that I've ever read, are people who have reserved sex for marriage and that they are mutually exclusive. They're happier, okay? Because they haven't got these crazy expectations of what sex is supposed to look like. They haven't got these comparisons running around in their head. So I'm not sure where you are in your sexual relationships with each other. Maybe you have already had sex with other people. I don't know. What I would encourage you to do is, if that has happened, that you talk about that with God and you ask for forgiveness and you move on. God can heal you of those hurts, by the way, whether that means abuse or that means different things that have happened in your life. God can heal you and you can have a healthy sexual relationship. And I want to encourage you to, whatever it takes, to work through that in your marriage for the sake of your partner. Marriage involves leaving one's family of origin and being united to one's spouse, which talks about the establishing of a new family unit distinct from the two original families. This is your own. This is the new family. While one flesh suggests sexual intercourse and normally procreation, at its very heart, it's the concept of a new kinship relationship between two previously unrelated individuals and families by the most intimate of human bonds. You come together. In fact, in the Old Testament, it talked about how the husband would take a year off of work once he got married to get to know his wife, to learn his wife, literally to go to school on his wife. That's a great concept. I wish it was possible for all of us to do because we need to understand our spouses. We need to learn what makes them tick. To help them to grow, to become the people that God has called them to be. Then we have what is called the mutuality of marriage. Marriage is a relationship of free self-giving of one human being to another. It's the marriage partners are to be first and foremost concerned about the well-being of the other person and to be committed to each other in steadfast love and devotion. In Ephesians chapter 5, Paul talks about this. He says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Now, in the Bible, there are different kinds of love. There is philios love, which is a kind of a brotherly love. There's eros love, which is a erotic love. And then there's agape love, which is spoken of here. Husbands, love your wives. It's a self-sacrificing love. And he goes on to explain what that means. In this context, what he's saying is, as Christ loved the church. Well, how did Jesus love the church? He loved the church so much that he willingly gave his life for the church. And what Paul tells to husbands, you need to love your spouse so much that she knows that you would be willing to lay down your life for her, that you put her first, that you put her needs first above your own. You will do whatever it takes to help her, to care for her, to protect her. And you as a husband need to let her know that that's who you are. That's the commitment that you're making to her. And the Bible actually talks about let the wife see to it that she respects her husband. And what that means is that she should believe in him. She should respect him and to offer him that respect. Don't belittle him. Don't put him down. Don't do those things that would make him think that he is not capable of doing things. A lot of times women don't really understand the power that they have over their husband in that way. If I'm sensing that my wife, for example, doesn't believe in me or thinks I'm incapable of something, it's devastating to think that she doesn't believe in me. But if she does believe in me, if I have a sense that she thinks that I can do something, I'm willing to take on the world for that. And it's a need for a man and a need for a woman, okay, is to have that person who says, listen, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I am with you. I will care about you. I believe in you. And that's why it's so important to learn the other person's love language, to provide for the other person what they need to be healthy. If you notice something wrong, ask what's going on and communicate until you figure it out. Commit yourselves to communication and so that you can figure out how to do that. The mutuality of marriage. We need to work through that together and understand our roles. And in fact, you might want pause this tape and or this video and talk about that. What are the roles that we expect of each other? I know that there are all kinds of different things, different relationships. My wife at times has stayed home with the kids. She's actually homeschooled at different times. There are times that she's had a career. Right now, we're jointly working here at the church, but there's also times that she's been working in the school system. And there have been different times in our lives when she's served different roles, and in different marriages. Sometimes I know of husbands who've stayed home to care for the kids while the wife, who had a better career, a better job, did that. But those roles need to be agreed upon, and they need to be working for you. So you need to talk through that so that your expectations are understood. Okay. So if you want to pause, you can do that and have that discussion as well. And finally, what we have is the exclusiveness of marriage. And I know we've already talked about this, but I think it's important to understand this. Marriage is not only permanent, sacred, intimate, and mutual, it's also exclusive. And that means no other human relationship should interfere with the marriage commitment between a husband and a wife. Now, that doesn't just mean sexually, even though it does very clearly mean sexually. So if you're going into marriage and thinking about, well, I can still have flings on the side, get that out of your head. That's the stupidest idea in the world. Don't do that. All right. For this reason, Jesus treated sexual immorality of a married person, including even our thought life, with utmost seriousness. Because when we allow thoughts even of sexuality outside of our marriage relationship to go around and around in our heads, it produces an unhealthy affection in our minds, and it leads us away from our spouse. And it produces all kinds of bad consequences. So I would encourage you to make sure that you hold on to that intimacy. There's another kind of intimacy that I want to warn you against with someone else, and that is emotional intimacy. There may be times in your marriage when you find that you're not maybe getting along as well as you used to, that maybe the communication is not quite there. Maybe he's not listening to you, or she's not listening to you, and she's not treating you the way that you want to, or maybe you've had a child and she's tired, and maybe the sex is not happening as often as you want it to, and so in your mind you're thinking you're feeling rejected, and all of these things go on. Well, that's very often the time when someone else slides into the picture, and it may seem innocent. It might be the secretary at work, and she notices that you aren't feeling very well, and because you're looking down, and she's asking how you're doing, and she's listening to you, and you will find yourself having these conversations that grow more and more intimate and talking about intimate details of your life. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this is not a good thing, but it's comfortable and it's nice and it's making you feel better. Or maybe it's with a guy that you work with in your job, and it's drawing you away, and you sense that. Stop. A lot of people are having emotional affairs and they don't realize that they are. It will draw you away from that intimate relationship with your spouse. Don't allow someone else to replace what your spouse ought to be doing in your relationship. Okay? Now, so I want to encourage you, if you find yourself in that place where you're having these thoughts, that's the time to stop and have a conversation and say, hey, listen, I don't think we're communicating as well as we used to. Can we sit down? Can we talk about this? Because I don't want to lose that. You're the most important person in my life, and I don't want to be drawn away. I don't want to have anything with anybody else. I want it to be you and you exclusively. So I want to encourage you to that. And for the same reason, the Bible also talks about premarital sex is also illegitimate because it violates the exclusive claims of one's future spouse. And by the way, the Bible really does talk a lot about having a good sex life, believe it or not. It talks about everything. If you read the Song of Solomon, you'll find that you'll go, does that mean what I think it means? Well, it probably does. It's a song of Solomon. The Song of Solomon is about an intimate relationship between a committed couple, a committed married couple, and it actually talks about a lot of things that we would think, oh wow, I never would have thought to find that in Scripture, but it's there. And the whole point is that when we are exclusive, it can create all kinds of wonderful things for us in our marriage relationship, and it's meant to bring us together. That exclusivity. And so, what is marriage? It's an incredible thing, but it's designed to make us mature, to make us grow up. And so, as we do that, it's a beautiful thing. There's nothing in my mind that is better than seeing a couple that has come through the storms and is still standing strong. My wife and I, we've been married for a long time. It'll be 38 years in September as I'm filming this. And we've had some challenging times. We've had wonderful times. And I have to tell you that the depth of our relationship grows all the time. And I really appreciate that. We know each other. We get to talk about all kinds of things. And there should be nothing hidden. There should be nothing that you can't talk about. And you may have a little bit of discomfort as you start out, but I'm hoping that you will take the time to work your way through that. Again, I would encourage you to find a mentoring couple. If you have a hard time finding somebody, just let me know and I will try and connect you with someone who could do that for you, who could play that role for you. And I also have a book that I want to give you just to kind of help you along in some of these areas that we've talked about. We're going to have a conversation in a little while about your actual marriage ceremony if I'm doing your wedding. And so we'll be preparing for that soon, and I would encourage you to get in touch with me if you haven't heard from me and you're wondering when that's going to happen. So just let me know, and I would be glad to make that happen for you. Okay, I look forward to that. I look forward to doing the wedding ceremony. I love doing this. I love watching new couples make this commitment to each other. But can I tell you, your commitment to your marriage really starts now. Don't wait. You believe that this person is the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. Don't do something stupid leading up to it, thinking that it doesn't matter. But I want to encourage you, love that person, care for that person, begin the communication process now, and even stop this video after we're done and just have a conversation about how important this is for you, what your expectations are in marriage, because I want to encourage you that you allow marriage to shape you. You don't go into it with rose-colored glasses, but with the real view that, hey, I know that life is going to be challenging. Life is always hard. Jesus actually said, in this world you will have trouble. That's a promise we don't like, but it's there. But he also said, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. And so what I would encourage you both to do is to make sure that your commitment to Jesus Christ is real. And I want to tell you why. We talked about the marriage triangle, that God is first in every marriage. And if you put him first in your marriage, you will both draw closer to each other. And so as you grow in your relationship to God, you will both grow in your relationship with each other if you're both making that commitment. There's nothing better than that. Like I said, when you do the surveys, when you look at all the studies, those are the happiest marriages. People who are together in their worldview, they understand the same things, they're working for the same thing. You realize that God brought you together. He brought you together for a reason, and it's a voyage of discovery, if you like, about what marriage is all about. Why did he bring us together? Why did he put us here? And what are we going to accomplish as a couple? And I look forward to watching you guys do that over the next however long I have on this earth, okay? But God bless you guys. We'll be talking to you soon. Take care.